It's software that helps you find and repurpose your media using AI. And as such, it's useful and it's very cost effective and it stays private to you. Axle AI is a software company devoted to helping people manage large amounts of video content. And we do this using AI.
What platforms do you run on?
Hardware, we run on things like Mac Minis, Mac Studios, bigger, beefier hardware going all the way up to multi-rack mount servers.
Well, why would somebody use a product like Axle? What benefit do you provide?
The biggest thing is searchability and reusability of content. In recent years, there's been a very aggressive trend towards needing to reuse content that would otherwise have lain dormant. And we see this across many industries.
For example?
Business. People say, hey, we're the marketing department. We need a clip of our CEO talking about sustainability. And we need it by 2 p.m. for a social media post. Now, in the old days, no one ever asked you for that kind of thing. Or they would have like the entire speech that the CEO gave at last month's convention somewhere. But they would never come at you out of the blue and ask you for a little snippet of audio and video about a particular topic. Now, because of social media, that's all they do. Day in, day out, they're like, oh, couldn't we have one where he's looking to the left and asking a question because I want to put a cute, post on TikTok and so on and so forth. And this has the potential to drive videographers and post-production teams nuts because whether it's in a corporate environment, sports, churches, government, it's really the same problem, which is like no one used to ask them for anything before, and now they're getting bombarded by requests for typically short form, but anything from a few seconds for TikTok up to 30 minutes for YouTube and beyond.
There's any good quantity of what's called media asset managers here at the show. They seem to be springing up like kudzu. What makes you unique?
I think the history of the media management space is that for a long time it was devoted to the needs of large broadcasters. I happen to have been part of that and serviced those needs when I was at Avid, and it's a part of the world that is quite different from the one that Axle is currently seeing. We still have some large broadcast customers, but because of all this rapid growth in content in other areas, they're outnumbered. So broadcast for us is about 15% of our business. Everything else is 85%. And if you were to look at a traditional MAM provider, those numbers would be flipped. They're primarily for broadcasters, and then once in a while, someone else will buy the product. So that's probably the biggest thing. And the other thing is there's a lot of growth in these segments because they don't have a track record or an infrastructure set up to sort of on an ongoing basis crunch through the year's content. They're winging it. They're running and gunning. They're shooting stuff. It's landing on hard drives. Then they're consolidating those hard drives onto network storage. And finally, they're having to search for things. But they're making it up as they go, which is a higher energy environment than selling to traditional broadcast.
Which gets me to my favorite question. What have you got for us that's new?
The main announcements we have here at the show are that, first of all, we're bringing our scene understanding and semantic search.
What does semantic mean?
Semantic means approximate. In other words, or conceptual is a way to think about it. If you're looking for a particular word or phrase, you don't have to type in the exact word or phrase. You can talk about the concept that phrase describes, and semantic search will find it. And likewise, if you're looking for a video of a couple, but you don't know which couple, you just remember that they were on a beach. You could just say couple on a beach, and it might find a mix of couples on beaches, couples in deserts, couples in ballrooms, but in descending order, the highest ranked first and the other ones further down. Well, the big announcement here at the show is that we're bringing our semantic search to the Mac Mini and Mac Studio. Used to be that you'd require more server or workstation level hardware with NVIDIA cards. We're making it possible now on, under $1,000 boxes like the Mac Mini. The other big announcement that we're having here at the show is that we're doing private cloud deployments of our Axle AI cloud product. And that means that for larger companies that don't want to just run on a Mac Mini or even a small server farm, but want to run in a global or distributed way, they can get these capabilities very easily spun up and completely private to them. Because a lot of AI these days involves essentially sharing your media with the cloud and then having it trained and then not knowing what people are going to do with it after that. Our approach is to keep it very intensively private to the client, and whether it's on-premise or in their own private cloud, the AI inferences about their media, the training, the metadata, none of that ever leaves their company, which is a huge advantage over what I would say is the vast majority of AI solutions.
Are you a standalone application, or do you work with other apps?
We definitely work with other apps. We have a whole ecosystem. We work with archiving companies, storage companies, networking. We work very well with the editing companies. So we have a Premiere Panel, and we also have a drag and drop mini app that works with Final Cut, Resolve, and Avid. So we have essentially all the major editing software companies partnered in. And then what's really interesting is we're starting to develop partnerships with AI companies who develop specialized AI, sports AI, natural wildlife AI. You know, people are developing these models because it's a big open community now. So you can take those models and plug them into what we do, and then a customer can have not only general AI inferences about their stuff, but also very specialized, like I want to be able to tell the difference between these three kinds of fighter planes, or I want to be able to tell the difference between one species of coral and another species of coral if you're doing underwater work. Those things are easy to plug in and, again, build the ecosystem.
What are some of the trends you're watching this year that the rest of us need to pay attention to?
At the high level, AI is infusing the industry. You see it all over, which is very exciting because when we started Axle AI, it was 7 years ago, and we had a suspicion that this would be important, but we couldn't prove it. Today, I think you can prove it. The other thing is that we are seeing a distinct swing back towards on-premise and hybrid deployments. People, I think, overreacted to COVID when nobody went to the office, and they were sitting at home in their pajamas going, what do I need an office for? In the last few years, they've started to realize what they needed an office for, and so we're seeing many, many more requests for essentially an on-premise solution surrounded by or with the halo of a cloud capability so that they can handle the remote workers and the intense needs of this very large amounts of on-premise storage with the same system.
I think it's safe to say that media is under stress today, as at least different parts of media is, and whether we're looking at broadcast or the creator economy. Within that environment, what are the biggest challenges for a company like yours?
Driving change and keeping up with change concurrently. We are, a 20-something person company. We are growing. Our customer base is growing, but there's a big world out there, and so how we keep providing value to those customers and consistency as we grow while bringing in the best of what we see. In fact, that's one thing we're doing at our booth is we have 2 partner companies in our booth with demo stations. And then we also have a larger partner, Atomos, right next to us. They've just rolled out a product called Atomosphere here at the show that incorporates some of our technology. And so it's all about partnerships. Like, we can only do so much, but I think with these partnerships, we can do a lot more.
One of the things that I'm seeing is there seems to be a reaction against the cloud, like we've moved too much stuff to the cloud, and as one of the speakers talked about, repatriation of data coming back down locally. Why is privacy so important?
Well, I should add that repatriation is not just about privacy, it's also about cost. Because the promise of the cloud was that you would hand all your data over to someone else, and that magically it would cost less to house and manage and maintain there than it did in your facility. That has not turned out to be the case because there's a built-in markup. Cloud providers have to essentially buy the same hardware that you would buy, service it and manage it, and then put your stuff on top of it and charge you for it. So it's the opposite of getting rid of the middleman. You've introduced a new middleman, and they're your cloud vendor. And particularly with the operating expense or OPEX financial model, this means that, say you're storing a petabyte, it used to be that you could put together a big bulky server and just feed it electricity and you had your petabyte. But if you go to a cloud vendor and say, please house my petabyte, you're going to be spending a lot more over a number of years than you would have just feeding that box electricity. And that's even if you factor in the initial purchase cost of the box.
It's like renting access to your media.
Exactly. And you compound that problem with the privacy questions and with the security questions. Because if it's on your own private network, with rare exceptions, there's the Sony Pictures hack. There are obviously cases where this happened. But for the most part, you can control what happens to it. When you put it in the cloud, you may or may not have that level of control. And there are a lot of terms of service with these cloud vendors that give them the right to, for instance, retain content for future use, to be determined. That's a very scary prospect for someone who's in the content business, particularly because AI is incredibly good at taking stuff and morphing it into something else that's similar but not exactly the same. So in the old days, the worst thing that could happen to your content is that someone would pirate it. You would find it somewhere and you would sue them. You say, you pirated my content, you were showing it in Indonesia at 3 a.m, I want my royalties, right? Now, it's not that clear because once they've taken it, they may scrape it, train an AI that then generates a new show that only looks a little bit like your show, but is not actually actionable legally. And so because of these kind of open-ended possibilities, privacy and control of media become that much more important.
What's the one thing you want people to know about Axle? Sort of summarize it in a paragraph. What's the key thing?
It's software that helps you find and repurpose your media using AI. And as such, it's useful and it's very cost effective and it stays private to you.
Sam, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.